Hello and welcome back to Auto Nerd. Today, we have a slightly different topic. I love to cover the things that make our jobs tick, make our jobs work, and make them, well, understandable. Because work in a business that I tell people all the time this is not the car business. Selling cars is not the car business. We can say that all day long that, oh, we're in the car business. Are you? Are you spinning wrenches on cars? Are you helping customers with their issues with vehicles? You're not. You're not in the car business. You're in the people business. And people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And today we're going to be diving into the emotional side, one of the yucky items that a lot of people don't want to talk about, simply because this particular one is incredibly hard to identify for most. But if you listen to the tools I'm going to give you throughout this podcast, you will be able to identify these items. And in addition to that, I'm going to promise you a couple things in this particular podcast. I've written this podcast in a very similar fashion to how I write our auto shop tools. Now, the auto shop will be going live. My target is January to get that out to everybody. It's been my dream to build an online school for car sales consultants. And finally, I have been able to kind of cobble together the time to be able to pull this off. The auto shop will give you the ability to be better at what you do on the daily. It'll be a weekly subscription to give you all the tools that you need to be able to navigate this thing in such a way to prove that you can sell a lot of cars. You can do it being a decent person. You can get great CSI by doing it, and your gross profits are going to go far higher than any other style of sales where you have to be pushy or apply pressure. You've heard me say it a billion times, is that closing starts in the first 20 minutes. And do you have a deal in the first 20 minutes? No, you don't. But if you don't spend the time up front, everything's going to fall apart there. So let's get into this kind of sticky and yucky topic. We're going to call this the emotional GPS navigator. Here we go. Well, hopefully in the next 22 minutes, I'm going to try to pull off what my tools pull off in about 3 hours of me writing those things. The first is this. I'm going to give you a proven stack back framework for navigating the emotional sides of things. The emotional navigation segment here is all about finding those little areas where all of a sudden the customer just like drifted off. And you're sitting there going, come back, come back. You feel the emotional click as you're working for them. All of a sudden, everything's really high. And then all of a sudden, click, it's gone. And you have no idea why. You have no idea what just happened. You just gave the customer everything on the vehicle that they could possibly want. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, I'm gone. We're going to talk about that and how to identify it and prevent it from happening. Also, we're going to go through 3 signals that suggest the customer might actually be drifting. And I know it sounds similar to the first one here, but I'm going to give you the stats. We're going to give you the identifier. Then we will go through scripts, drills, and a weekly challenge to anchor confidence back on down. So let's start with the data here because the data is always awesome, and welcome to Auto Nerd. And that's kind of what we do here. So here's what the research shows. When sales professionals spend too much time talking, their gross profits drop significantly. And the data on this was pretty amazing as I started to discover it. According to Gong Labs, they did a huge survey on just calls. And what they found with sales calls out of 326,000 of these things. So this was not like an overnight, hey, we took 10 calls and here's the stats. This is actual cold hard facts. Top performers talk roughly 43% of the time and listen roughly about 57% of the time. But there's a fall off. They actually identified a fall off of when you're just yakking too much. And that is at 62%. At 62%, your gross profit starts falling, and they can judge that. But this means that if we dominate the conversation, we increase the risk of alienating that customer and the customer just mentally pulling away. And this is what we mean, is the customer just going somewhere else because we are just moving our mouths. Well, Gong Labs found out if you're talking too much, all of a sudden you are at risk of losing that deal. So don't dominate the conversation. That's not the point. 80% of the conversation should be about the person that's sitting directly in front of you. Less than 20% should be about us if possible. Apply the evidence of what shutting the gap does to your bottom line and your gross profit. Check this. There's a talk ratio, and this was a study done by Modista. And what they found is over 100,000 customers, if the emotional bond between the consultant and the customer was strong, you had 2 times more likeliness of that customer being satisfied. But with that, satisfaction's great, but it doesn't pay the bills. What does pay the bills? A 306% higher lifetime value out of that customer does. That means that customer's buying that car right then and there. They're paying more money for that vehicle at that stop. In addition to that, they will be back. A 306%, that's like saying you literally need to screw something up to not sell this person a car. Here's the translation on that one for you. A customer who feels simply seen and feels safe and feels confident in the individual that they are working with is far more likely to buy, far more likely to refer people, and way more likely to come back for service. So who's the one drifting here? Is the customer who's come in the door then obviously just wants to buy something and get out of there? Or is it us going away from our typical road to the sale and simply just looking at the customer and just running our mouths? Because as we can tell from this, running our mouth is not helping at all. Okay, let's get practical on this though, because we have to identify these three ways of drift in order to be able to recover and prevent these "I'm just lookings" or that they come on 45 minutes into the deal, or I need to think about it when you know darn well that customer is sold on that product and this is the best thing for their lives. So, first one here, signal number 1. Silence and minimal response. If you're getting silence and minimal response, the customer is now on that boat and the wind is slowly pushing them offshore and they're going away from you. When you ask the questions and you start to get replies like, yeah, that's fine, or delayed, yep, yep, and this is when you know that your confidence took a hit, and you gotta think that through, and you can't just leave it here. If you leave it here, you're gonna do it again and again and again on the next few deals. So you have to pull back a little bit and understand that you did something, and we need to change that something. So what do we gotta do? Take a minute after they leave, wheel it back a couple minutes from that point, and figure it out. The other one is this, is that their tone or body language just completely shifts, right? Maybe the customer crosses their arms, looks at their phone and says something like, "Hey, you know what? I just kind of want to think about it." And then you're thinking the worst at your desk. You're sitting there going, "Oh man, what just happened?" And then the next one is their tone or body language completely changes. It's as though you went from having a good buddy for a little while and to now, what the heck? Who is this person that I'm dealing with? They're not the same person that I've been with for the past 2.5 hours. Tone and body language is something that we all pick up on. It's as though it's a sense that's built into us that we have yet to have the ability to actually address and label. And you'll be able to notice this pretty quickly. People will cross their arms, they'll look at their phones, they just seem completely disconnected. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'll just think about it, comes out, and you're like, what the? Dude, I've been working with you forever here. What do you mean you just think about it? Everything that's in the car that you wanted, right? Well, yeah. Well, somewhere along there, the disconnect came along and it was broken. Basically, excitement fell off. And then we have signal C here, and this is one that we can all work on. It doesn't matter what department you're in. You could be the F&I director, you can be in the BDC, you can be the sales manager, the used car manager, sales consultant. Doesn't matter. Heck, you can be the owner talking to somebody, and you're going to get this occasionally. It's when we get very feature driven and we completely become feeling disconnected. We're not spending time with the customer engaging those feelings. Money profit is directly connected to somebody's emotional ability to say yes. If they're not amped up about your product, you can almost expect for them to say things like, I'm just looking to run away. But when you start to get feature driven and not feeling driven, this is when you start to see a shift from people excitedly going, tell me about the car, to what's my interest rate again? Well, I'm not in that department. I can't do that for you, but let's find you a car that's going to work because you can't drive a payment. In one breath, the customer has gone from excitement to risk. Now, when this happens, of this excitement to risk shift, this is because you've thrown something out there that kind of spiked the customer's spidey senses. And now they're like, oh, well, I'm not too terribly sure about this. And now the customer wants to back up a bit. It is recoverable from. But if you go back a couple podcasts, I think like podcast 61 or 62, I talked about the emotional connectors and when we should be introducing logic and why it's important to keep emotional side of things riding very high, right? We drive anxiety down and we drive emotion and happiness up. If those are up, logic just steps in and goes, "Yep, yep, yep. We've checked all the boxes. We are good to go." And that is the goal. That is what we were looking for. Just like our tools on the auto shop, we are going to be providing you scripts along the way. And for today, we came up with three good ones and two super crappy ones. And the two super crappy ones we use all the time, and we kind of need to stop just because they're hurting us and they're taking profit directly out of our paychecks. And I know none of us out there really want to deal with a smaller paycheck if it simply comes down to a couple easy things that we can fix. So here are a couple high impact scripts that you can use immediately and those poor scripts that you can hopefully purge. So a good script here. Let's pause a sec. I want to make sure that you're still comfortable with the direction that we're heading. This is checking in with the customer, and it's always a good thing to do to be able to just simply tap in with them and go, "Hey, where are you at right now?" And to make sure that you're both on the same page. And then the next one here, I feel a shift. Didn't I lose you somewhere? And if the customer is willing, they'll realize that you are their partner in this and that you're there to help them out and have their best interest in mind. And if you've done this right, they will tell you right then and there what is going on. Now, you might get one of the, I just need to think about it kind of things. And this is when you back up a little bit and go, okay, so what did I show that may have made this or caused this to happen? And when you find that item that you realize, hey, this is what I did that kind of messed up this whole thing, then you can backpedal and start to patch that up. And then the next one here, it sounds like something changed. Help me see it from your side. And we're not going to have all the answers. We're going to give the customer a lot of stuff to think about, but we will definitely not have all of the answers, which is why this 4357 rule plays a huge part here. Remember that 4357, that's the rule that basically stated shut the heck up, right? 43% of that conversation needs to be at maximum, you speaking. Now, I like to reduce that down even further. 85% of the conversation needs to be about the customer's life. Only 10 to 15% about mine. Let's move on to the poor scripts here. So, you're ready to move forward or not? You want to talk about lazy and pressure? Yeah, just throw this one out to the customer. So you're ready or not? It doesn't. It makes you sound pushy. It makes you sound greedy. It makes you sound desperate, and it doesn't make you really sound like you're in it for the customer. And I understand why the customer would run away at this point. And then there's this one. If you don't want it, just say no. I hear people pull this one out, and it's like, no, you don't understand. That is one of the dumbest things that you can say, primarily because they're still sitting in front of you. They're looking for permission. Once you've gotten to this point and the customer starts to backtrack, this is when permission went one of two ways. They're saying, yes, logic will let me go ahead and do this. Or they're going ahead and saying, something's fishy here. I got to think about it. We want to stay out of that. There's something fishy here. So we can dive right on into the confidence and the happiness, right? Getting somebody to simply buy this. Logic checks in and goes, we're good. And here's your drill for this particular activity. Take a couple minutes. You're gonna need a partner for this one, but set yourself about a 60-second timer. Have a partner play the role of the customer, and as soon as you see drift as you're talking to them, signal it, point it out. Once you see that they're not engaged, once you see that there's some sort of pause or misalignment in the conversation, recognize it. Recognize that feeling. Once you understand what that feeling is, then we can start to prevent it from happening. But start off with one of the stronger scripts here. Something like, I feel the shift. Did I lose you somewhere? And have that conversation, or start off with a conversation about the car and just wait until that drift happens. But if you practice this with one of the other consultants, you'll know because you know that person. All of a sudden you see that disconnection, and then you can start to reel it back. No matter what area of the dealership you are in, you can put some effort into practicing this. Inside the downloadable tool for this week, I've added in the information for BDC, sales, service, F&I, and parts. We service all of it over here at AutoNerd. Now, drift can happen across any area of the dealership. Because of this, I've written in the information into this particular downloadable tool for this week for the BDC sales, service, F&I, and parts. Each one of these is going to give you the ability to go, okay, so I'm in the BDC. How exactly does this work? Well, in the BDC, for example, in a digital touch, the drift may show up in a text reply where the customer says, well, I'm just curious, or long delays between correspondence. The fix here, validation of the concern, and then confident info to back it up. Pretty simple. With sales, it's more of a mid demo kind of thing where we're working with a person and you see their body language just plummet. And when it does, pause, mirror it real quick, and ask some feeling based question like, hey, where do we like fall apart here? In service, the customer hesitates at the cost. And this is pretty consistent all the time. And if you recognize this one and understand how to navigate it, you become a weapon of a service advisor. But use plain language. Show them a photo, invite questions, encourage dialogue that moves them to an area of being happy with your services. In F&I, again, we have this pop up again where people are like, I need to think about it. And then you retreat and you immediately go into pressure. You immediately go into attempting to reassure the customer that this is a good idea for them when they don't even know if it's a good idea for themselves. Remember, in F&I, we are salespeople, but we have a much finer period of time to deal with the customers, which means that needs assessment needs to be entirely different. Mainly, you got to kick it off on a high note, or the customer is just kind of going south here. And then in parts, when someone isn't sure if the part fits, you drop that expert tone and you have to rise up with some just simple certainty about, hey, you know what? I double checked this against the VIN and it looks like it's going to. And this will give them the confidence. But also at the same time, you have to get over that whole like argument about, well, why do I need a VIN number? It's just a 95, blah, blah, blah. Well, you need a VIN number so I can know which part to get you. But either way, drift happens across the board and it's something that isn't not necessarily preventable 100% of the time because everybody's a little bit different, but once you figure out who the person is, especially in sales through needs assessment, you can try to stay away from those areas after you get to know who the person is. And if you're a manager and you want to fix this problem at your dealership, because it's a problem all over the place. This directly relates to pressure, by the way. If you can get this problem out of the way, the pressure tactics go away as well. And all of that, crushing the customers head on in order to get profit is not needed. And I see that crap pop up on my YouTube feed all the time. That's not how things are sold. That's how you take customers off and get them to never come back. And if they buy that one car, they're not buying it at much profit. They just simply aren't. Telling the customer no and yelling at them is not a good idea. Now, if you're a manager, I have a script for you too. And part of all of our tools here at AutoNerd are about all of us trying to figure out how to be not only better at what we do, but also have a better leadership division and being able to be a manager that people look to, that people desire to deal with, that isn't super annoying, but is there to be able to afford you the ability to be confident in what you do is something that we all look for. Remember, people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. And a lot of times when they quit managers, it's because the manager just shows that they do not care anymore. And in the car world, I see this happen with new car and used car managers all the time. Not so much on the used car side, they seem to be far busier usually. On the new car side, I see this happen a lot where eventually we burn out as managers and we don't care. So it's time for you to get back up on that horse, start coaching your sales consultants again because you can do it. Now, since most of us as managers are not teachers, we've gotten together over here at AutoNerd, and all of us are teachers, we're trainers, we were sales consultants at one point. We've been in this industry a billion years. And so we've come up with a leadership script for all of you. When you kick your meetings off, give it this a go. Drift doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in as a tone change, a pause, or a simple, I'm just curious coming out of the customer's mouth. This week, we're training to catch it and to fix it before it sinks your deal. Because as soon as it sinks your deal, now you need to apply pressure to catch up. So the challenge is pretty simple. Each person that is at your dealership logs a confidence save. So if they noticed that moment came about and they were able to act on it and they were able to fix it and they brought the customer back, note it on down. So on a piece of paper, log the department, the spotted signal, the action that was taken, and at the week's end, maybe reward a consultant or an advisor or F&I director or somebody in the BDC with an award that helps them understand that they did something good. Remember, we're trying to reinforce good behaviors here. And in our business, we are taught all the time crappy behaviors that apparently are accepted and people pay for them. I don't really get that. The thing with this is that every single day we are being hammered with CSI directives and we are being hammered with things like customer experience problems. And it's the easiest thing to fix. It's just about being nice and helping people out with what they want to do day to day. But it does all start at the top. When it does come to management, we got to be able to have our scripts together. If you took nothing else away from today's show, personally, that 57%, 43% listen, 57% talk rule, that's huge because that is straight up proof of what is going on with your customers when we don't shut our mouths. Mainly, if it comes to you talking 62% of the time, my rule of thumb with this, you're over the 50% mark. Shut the heck up. Let the customer talk. My personal rule, again, 85% of the conversation, the customer should be talking about themselves. And only 10 to 15% of the conversation, I should be saying something because it's about them. It's not about us. We're the guides. And if you go anywhere where there's a guide, a lot of the times they let you talk and they will tour you around places you want to go. So we got to make sure that we are just shutting up and letting the customer speak. So 43% talk, 50%, 57% listen. And then we also need to train that emotional radar. Look for things like silence, tone, and shift. They all let us know that this equals drift. Yes, shifting and downshifting equals drifting. The days burning up tires is that with this silence, tone, and shift equal lost profit. They equal lost customer. They equal a customer that is not going to pay you as much, put more food on your table. And then lastly, you got to fix the empathy first, clarity second, and the next step third. Empathy is one of the biggest things. The most talented consultants that are out there do a reasonable needs assessment, but they see the world through the customer's eyes. And this is when we start to see consultants that go from this 10 car, 12 car a month person to 40 to 50 cars and they barely say a word. It's simply because they're asking questions that get them in the customer's shoes and they try to embody that customer's life. After that, clarity, it's a huge thing. Just make sure that when you're talking to the customer, they understand what the heck you're saying in a tone that they can accept. If they can't accept that tone, then they just say I'm just looking, or, well, I was just curious. And then third, all the other bigger things, right? Then that's all the other things like making sure it's the correct car, making sure they're happy with it. Because when your customer feels confident, they buy. And they buy more quickly. They buy at higher gross profit. They buy when you let them and they know that you are in their corner. They don't buy when they are confused and something is telling them to walk. And you don't buy either when that happens. Your spidey senses go off and you're like, this is not the place for me. And you simply just leave. So grab that tool that I have. It is down in the show notes. It's called the Doubt Detector. Yes, you will have to sign up for the newsletter. But the newsletter every week comes out and it gives you some nice positive things to take a look at, especially on Saturdays. And I will be getting back to doing that consistently. I finally got the webpage back up and running. And it's beautiful too. Go on over to autonerd.com, AUTOKNERD.com, and you're going to see the brand new Auto Forge over there. That is super awesome, helping dealers fix their CSI. You'll also see kind of the chiseled out area for the auto shop, and then you'll also see Auto Drive, which I am not saying a word about for the next few months. That is like top secret awesomeness right there, and I'm really excited to show that to the world. But with that, put it to use, download it, see what it's all about. You're getting the full dealer version this week and probably next week as well. This is a carbon copy of an AutoForge that is not tuned to a dealer, which is what we do on the AutoForge. We interview all of the staff and we figure out exactly what's going on, and we work with management to orient the tool to work best for you. So you get the AutoForge this week as part of the Auto Shop tool. And so you can give it a go. If you're a manager, you'll love it. If you're an owner, pass it out to all your stores. You'll love it as well. So thanks for listening today. I'm Andrew Sardone from Auto Nerd. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep building those connections with your customers. Talk to you later. Bye.